discovery, the only one that's really real of the Four Noble Truths. And then fourth is the path. And the path is the Eightfold Path that you know, but basically, which has to do with realistic worldview, and realistic intention, realistic speech, realistic evolutionary action, realistic livelihood, realistic effort, mindfulness, and meditative concentration. And but those divide into three, what are called the three higher educations, Trini Adi Shikshani. And the word shiksha is still the word for education in India today, actually. People go training. I really don't like that, because you train soldiers, you train your dog or cat, or at least you do if you're smart. And you're not in my house, our dogs train us, but otherwise you train your dog. But human beings are not trained. Human beings are educated, which means their own wisdom and their own sensitivity and their own empathy is brought out by a process of learning, of critical learning, by a process of developing wisdom. So that is what the Dharma in practice, Adhigama Dharma, the Dharma in actuality, not just the text, but that's what it is called from the beginning of the Buddhist tradition, the three higher educations. So this, my thesis in a sense is not really anything exotic. It is what the Buddhists themselves call the tradition. You educate yourself ethically, you educate yourself psychologically and developing concentration through meditation, and you educate yourself intellectually through developing your wisdom, which proceeds in three stages. The wisdom is not some mystical thing. The wisdom is a reasonable thing. It may go beyond reason ultimately into some direct experience, but it does so reasonably, not unreasonably. And the first level of wisdom is wisdom born of learning. So that's why Buddhists, far from sitting around and just silencing their mind and not thinking or something, they learn something. It's have to educate themselves. And then second, they get into critical reflection. And that's why they debate a lot. And they argue about things, and they use reasoning, and they taught logic centuries before other people. And very marvelous logicians they had, extraordinary. And then finally, you get wisdom born of meditation, but that meditation only gets you somewhere, and you've already learned something, and you've already critically reflected about it. Then that meditation goes deep, and it breaks through the misunderstanding of the world and comes and brings you into experiential understanding of the world, not of some other mystical thing, of reality. One of my favorite terms when people ask me in a word, what is Buddhism? It's realism, is what Buddhism is. It is maybe engaged, you could say, realism, because it's based on, there is a little faith element at first, because it's based on the faith that ignorance is not bliss, and that the more you know the nature of the reality, the better off you will be. And when you finally know it completely, the nature of reality, which is possible to become enlightened, then you will be really eternally happy. As the Buddha said when he attained enlightenment, profound, peaceful, luminous, trouble-free, and uncreated. Like an elixir of immortality is this truth that I have discovered, or this dharma that I have discovered, this reality that I have discovered. And then he was coy about teaching. He said, whoever I teach it to, they will not understand. I think I'll stay by myself in the forest and relax. He said that verse according to the Tibetan tradition and the Sanskrit tradition. And then God actually showed up. Brahma, the creator in Indian culture. And God said, oh, come on, go teach people. Teach me. And Buddha made him ask him 3 times. Because, if God is not on your side, you won't get too far, He thought. Buddhists are not atheists, by the way. Dalai Lama likes to say non-theist about Buddhism, and I always try to get him not to say that and ask him to say like non-monotheist or something. But it's okay, I understand. He says non-theist, but he doesn't mean atheist, because Buddhists do believe in the existence of gods, of the creator God that the Indians thought was the creator, all of them, Yahweh, they're all out there. But just they don't believe that one of them is totally in charge of everything. That they don't believe. In fact, they even think, Brahma himself, in a Buddhist text, he speaks to a monk who visits him through meditative expertise and ability to create a kind of mind-made body, like a dream body, and go to the heaven where Brahma, the creator, lives, and asks Brahma, like, how did you create the world and how does it work? And Brahma said to him, do you have an appointment? And then he brushed him off, in other words. And then the guy left all disappointed. But then Brahma came around outside of that sort of court, his throne room, And he said, hey, come here. And then the guy was scared that God was mad, but he wasn't. But he just said, look, I couldn't tell you the real story in front of the godlings, because all the godlings are there who think I did create it. And I didn't create it. I just showed up here first. And I was wondering how it happened too. And then all the people showed up. All these other godlings came here, like gods are born by apparition, they say it, nirmita. And they pop. They were all there, and they looked at me and they went, Dada! And at first I went, I'm not your Dada, don't give me that. What's happening? And then they got so frightened looking and so like worried that I said, okay, I'll be Dada, everything is fine. And I've been reassuring them ever since. And when you asked me if I had told you, I didn't create it, I don't know how it works, they would have all freaked out, and we don't have enough shrinks up here in heaven. So I had to brush you off. I apologize. You're a real truth seeker. You'll become a Buddha in a future life. And when you do become a Buddha, please do me 2 favors. 1, come and teach me how it works, because I'm God, but I still don't quite know. And I still have a problem if it's me and the other, me versus, even though I'm giant Brahma, and have magical powers and clairvoyance and things. So teach me first. And second, go teach the human beings that when terrible things go wrong for them, they get sick, they die, their children die, things go wrong, certain people are elected president, tell them it's not my fault. We're in this together, So there is a story like that, and the Buddhists lived to tell a story like that in India, in a theistic India. So non-theistic by Dalai Lama just means that you can't, the God cannot help you free yourself from suffering. God can make you suffer, and gods are very powerful, it's like the president. But finally, they cannot liberate you from suffering. And so just faith in them will not help you do that. It might help in some worldly pursuit. They can help you with wealth and other things. The Buddhists do call on the gods for various, harvests and rains and non-disasters and things like that. They do. So they are theistic. They do believe there's a spiritual reality in the universe. But they just don't believe one particular. They think it's an insult even to say that the omnipotent God would create such a mess, with like the Pentagon in it and so forth. They really do. They think that's an insult. An omnipotent and omnicompassionate God in no way would create such horrible things. So we have ethics. We have the education in ethics, higher education in ethics, higher education in mind control, samadhi, concentration, understanding of the way the mind works, and finally higher education in wisdom, which is really science, understanding reality. And that becomes what I call, therefore, a civilizational matrix. And it transformed Indian culture for 1,500 years. And it has certain types of, it emphasizes nonviolence, it emphasizes the wisdom, the ability of the human being to understand themselves and the world and overcome superstition and things and really experience what is real. It emphasizes the human ability, the living being, especially human ability to overcome excessive greed, lust, hatred, envy, and all these kind of negative things, and therefore that education is really a complete thing, where it's an evolutionary thing. And it even argues the idea that we are, actually the purpose of our lives is education. It is not that we get educated to go out and do the real thing, which is what? Produce things, work for somebody, get a pension, pass the time watching TV after we get educated. No. Learning is our major thing we can do as a human being. And it is an evolutionary thing. And Buddha was way ahead of Darwin. He saw the ocean of evolution. Karma means evolution, actually. It doesn't mean some mystical fate, as people wrongly understand it. It means action, but it means the kind of action that carries an impact that transforms the being that acts. Just like evolutionary action does, although they say random and it only changes the genes and it tails over generations and they have all this kind of special things about it. Buddhism is even more evolutionary than Darwin. Because in fact, you're not evolving, according to Darwin, because you're not really there. All you're doing is running around carrying your genes from A to B without realizing that Richard Dawkins and your genes are making you do it. And you're not even there, and you disappear the minute you drop dead. But your genes go hopping along someplace. So in a way, evolution is not being connected to life, Darwinian.